I think we're ready to fire it.
I'm going to let him have the honors this time because he did all the wiring.
The Acura TSX replaced the RSX.
But Acura never gave us a TSX Type S.
Exactly. We had an RSX Type S, never got a TSX Type S, and it's time that we build the TSX Type S that Acura was too afraid to build.
Welcome to VTEC Academy. You're about to get schooled. In 2004, Acura came out with the TSX. It had the K24A2 motor that everybody loves. But this chassis could also accept a J series.
Yeah, the TSX shares the chassis, shares the basic structure with the Accord. And the Accord came with
A J series.
and the TL came with.
A J series.
So
And they're both basically have the same underpinnings.
exactly.
Yeah, double wishbone suspension and a nice big engine bay.
Tons of space in there.
Right.
So it would work that this should fit rather nicely in this.
Exactly right. And another thing about this car is it's double wishbone suspension. I mean, Real-Time Racing had all sorts of success racing this car. It was fast.
Exactly. It was beating up on BMWs and I forget what else was in that class, but they were taking on cars that cost more than this and were rear-wheel drive.
Yeah, but this was the replacement for the RSX with Real-Time Racing. So we got our hands on this one, and I would like to make an endurance car because I think this chassis is ideal. It's big enough, it'll fit any driver. It's got double wishbone suspension all the way around, and it'll fit a J series. And I think a J series is actually the ideal endurance car motor.
And probably if they would have put the J in the TSX,
It would have sold a ton more of those.
it would have sold a ton because it was smaller than a TL and it would have hauled some serious ass.
It would have. And they could have just put the 3.2 in it so that they didn't rain on the TL Type S's parade. But I think Acura was afraid of cannibalizing sales from the TL, which were great, by the way. It was outselling almost all the cars. I think it was outselling all the cars.
The
in its class.
TL in its class was the #1 seller for quite a few years. So
They probably were trying not to cannibalize that, but they really, really should have made a Type S. So that's what we're here to do today. So we got the two engines right here, and you can tell the J is actually quite a bit larger than the K. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to weigh them.
yeah, because people always say, "Oh, the J just weighs so much." So, but we have what came in this car stock.
Yep,
And we have the J. So let's figure out how much they weigh.
exactly. That's what we're going to do first.
65 pounds. I'm gonna say this is 43. 37.
What?
Good guess.
Got it right on the nose.
Should have went to Vegas.
Yeah.
Instead, you went to work.
Yes.
Any guesses?
350.
I don't remember. 351, Bob. 313.
320. Yeah, 325. It is got a bigger manifold. It's been zeroed out with this on it. All right, let's see what it is. 417.
The closest one without going over.
420.
Yeah.
No, you already picked 350, sir. That's awesome.
417 pounds.
417.
Damn.
With the AC compressor, 425.
Was that heavier than you thought it would be?
Yeah, barely. This weighs 12 pounds more than a K20.
It's all that extra displacement.
All that extra displacement. All that extra air from a 2.4 liter. Now, it's obviously a bigger crankshaft and that kind of stuff. What just broke? Broke the IAB. Luckily, I have another one in the shed. Right there. Down.
I guess 518.
518.
What do you got?
525. Is it 535? Is that what I say?
You said
525.
525.
525. What do you got?
Yeah, 600.
600.
537.
537. Yeah.
$1.
This price is right. Well, we're all wrong. It only weighs 481 pounds.
Oh.
What? Really?
Yeah.
You said that because you said 4. Or no, do you say?
I said 525.
5 something.
I said 525 or 565. It's 525. It's 481.
That's awesome.
481 pounds.
Dude,
481.
that is not bad.
That's not bad at all.
And then plus, we're going to use the aluminum subframe.
That gains us back 22 pounds of that weight, that extra weight.
So, and we have to add weight for an intermediate shaft for the K24.
Yeah, so
that's about
4
4
pounds. Yeah. So let's say that weighed 420. This weighs 481. So that's a 60-pound difference, 61-pound difference.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take off, what, 22 pounds? That was
22 pounds.
22 pounds. So that winds up being a 39-pound difference, basically, between the two motors.
And you get 2 more cylinders and a beefier transmission.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Right?
Bonus. Sweet. We're good. We're going to be putting in this barely heavier J series with a ton more torque into our TSX and seeing how she does.
Is this the J32?
This is a J32. Yeah, this
Okay.
is out of a the J35 be a little bit heavier, but this is basically a 0708 TSX engine. So it's got the nice magnesium intake manifold, and it's been modified.
So what's the benefit of the magnesium intake manifold? Is it just lighter, or is it
Supposedly it flows better.
flows better? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that everybody uses for high performance.
Okay.
So it's got, yeah, it flows better. We're going to have to replace our IB that I broke by not paying attention.
You might be able to just JB weld that.
Yeah, JB Weld.
No?
Anyway, no.
All right. Duct tape.
Duct tape it.
So we weighed both subframes.
Yeah, two things. First off, we could probably use an Accord subframe. But I had a TL subframe because it was aluminum. We weighed both of them, and there was a 22-pound difference between the steel K series and the TL. Now, we're changing the subframe because the mounts are in a slightly different location.
Okay.
It looks like the rack is going to bolt onto this subframe, no problems. So the geometry, as long as our lower control arms hook up the same, the geometry should be identical on this TL aluminum subframe in our TSX. So that should be very cool.
So that's the next step. Then we're going to throw that subframe in here and see if it lines up.
Yeah, we can throw it in and check and see if the lower control arms line up, and if they do, then we'll install the motor. So, you guys tried this on. What'd you find?
It goes on.
It bolts in.
It bolts right in.
Yeah, and then you also found something else out. This distance is about 37 inches. And this one, about 36 inches. So, this has actually got an inch wider track, which is totally understandable because if you look up the specs on the interwebs,
yeah.
it says 61.1 and 62.1.
Yeah.
So I haven't totally ruled out using this because it's obviously we need a J series one because if you can see this part right here, it's moved over. It's moved over to the left. You see this part right here? This is where the rear mount bolts. It's moved over to the right. Oh, the rack bolts in too. You found that out, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the rack bolts right in. So we could use this. It's going to just put camber in the car. And I haven't totally ruled that out, but adding a ½ inch at the bottom and not adding at the top may wind up causing some bump steer issues and things like that. So I bought some mounts for this thing. These are like basic aftermarket Anchor Industries mounts. I got them online through Rock Auto. Yeah, and then this is the driver's side mount. There's a piece that bolts here and comes out and bolts on the top of that engine mount on the side. These two go underneath the transmission and bolt into the subframe. I don't know if they'll work. Well, I assume if we get a V6 one, they'll work no problem. This one is the one that's on top of the
That's
on top of the
side.
yeah, bolts on the frame rail, boom, and then there's a bracket that bolts underneath here to the engine, and then this is the front and rear mount. They're a little bit different.
Difference in that snubber. Or
They're just a
something
little
there.
bit different. So one of these front and one of these rear, we'll figure that out. Basically, there's a big aluminum cast bracket that goes from this mount back to the block, and then off the rear mount to the block. So we should be able to hang it in with these mounts. Real quick, we just need to find the corresponding brackets to go with them and put them on, and then we should be able to bolt this thing in.
Well, this is a plastic thing with steel rings, yeah. Something is just not right there.
All right, well, this is our Accord mount for the frame rail. This is our TSX one. You can see the offsets are not even the same, which could be interesting because now that means I'm gonna have to come up with two different, I mean, the holes are aligned, but the spacing is different. You know what I mean?
And I'm thinking it's all in the frame rail, so the mounts themselves, like that bracket's the same.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, for me, what it means is if I wind up
if you're
doing,
making something that bolts there.
if I'm making a
Yeah.
part, it appears that this and this hole are at the same offset. This one's got to go travel more to the this one got to travel more to get to the frame rail. See how it's got less of a lump, more of a lump. And this one would definitely not work because the frame rail is going to come out and hit it. So this will not work, not even with spacers. Hey guys, so I decided we're missing some parts. We needed a subframe. I went this morning to go try to get it, but I'm gonna have to wield one of those big A-frames to support the motor. They apparently dropped the motor in the A-frame halfway on this car in order to get the cast off of it, so it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to get off. So I'm gonna bring muscle with me, and then we should be able to get it off pretty easily, and we'll be back in a few minutes. And then we can finish kind of putting it in the car. All right, so 2007 Accord, this has a subframe in one. I came by earlier this morning, but it was gonna be a two-man job because of this wonderful A-frame had to be hauled from across the yard. And actually there was one here when we came back. So we are now going to pull the subframes. They drop it like this, by the way, to pull the headers. So because the engine's sitting in, it wasn't gonna be real easy to do anything. So I brought muscle with me, and we are going to pull this puppy out of here. All right, somebody else can do something with this engine. We're done. Got our subframe, got it loaded, ready to head back. And well, you know what? I think we'll take those little side mounts off because they're gonna wonder about those. Anyway, got what we need. Time to pay and head back. Listen, we got 4 out of 5 parts. That's not bad. So we got our.
No, it took 45 minutes.
Oh, wow, that's pretty good. We needed that, obviously the subframe. We needed that bracket right there, and we needed a power steering pump. Back to the shop, clean this thing up. The engine in the car has been kind of a process, so kind of let me run you through it real quickly. We started off with the Accord V6 subframe, which bolts right in, by the way, and that allowed us to use the front and rear mounts on that subframe to kind of figure out where the engine belongs in the engine bay, but it turns out we can't really use that subframe. That subframe is physically wider, so when we put it in and attach the lower control arms, it actually spread the attachment points for the knuckles out by a ½ inch each side, an inch wider. That put a lot of camber in the setup, and that's really not going to work for us. So we needed to go back to this particular subframe. Now this subframe is relatively different. So this front mount place is actually over here on the J series. You can see this is where the front bracket is. So this is moved over about 8 inches. And on the rear, if we go back and look at it, you can see this is where our rear mount comes off of. So this is also moved way over. Now what we did was, after putting it in the car with the V6 subframe, we went ahead and constructed left and right mounts and just kind of hung the motor in there. Then we put the TSX subframe back in, and we welded up this fixture on the bottom in order to hold the engine in and level inside of our car. So once we did that, we were able to drop the motor on this subframe plus this fixture, and I was able to calculate how to make a rear bracket. So our rear bracket is connecting to the 4 bolts and takes a little jog over to where our mount is going to mount. Now this mount is actually our CL9 stock replacement mount. Technically it works for a J series as well, so we're going to explore that a little bit more with our Project TL. But now that we have the rear mount in and the engine right where it needs to be, level and straight, we're going to go ahead and put this back into our TSX, and I'm going to fine tune the left and right mounts, and our mount kit is going to be done. So right now I need to take our J series subframe out of our TSX, put this all back in the car, make any fine tuning adjustments I need to make to the right and left mounts, and we're going to have a mount kit. For those of you who are wondering about the front mount, I'm not particularly worried about that, and here's why. If you look at our J series mount kits, the EG, EK, stuff like that, we don't even use a front mount. The front mount actually, particularly if it's stiff, winds up just adding a lot more vibration to the whole setup. The majority of the engine control comes from the rear mount because it's close to the differential where all the torque forces are coming from, and a front mount generally on a lot of cars is really flimsy. If you look at the 8891 Civic, if you look at the torque mounts underneath the 925 Civic, the EK, the 06 Civic, and the RSX, that front mount's super flimsy. It's not there to control engine movement, it's there to limit how far the movement can be. The rear mount does all the control. So this system, although at some point down the road we might do something with the front, that's really not, I don't really care about that. I want to have a good, strong rear mount, rear bracket, decent right and left, and then we'll have a mount kit to put this in this car. For the driver's side, we wound up designing a bracket that bolts onto the frame rail and a bracket that bolts on top of the transmission, and then we were able to use a Hasport billet mount, and that should be everything we need in order to support that side. On the TL and the Accord, there's actually some mounts that are underneath on the subframe. We made this one extra beefy since we're not going to be using the ones on the subframe anymore. Over here on the passenger side, once again, we made a bracket. It goes down, bolts on the passenger side, and then we use an existing mount over here. Now this mount is actually going to be about ½ an inch short, so we're going to redesign this mount to have the flange in the correct position. It was kind of tight to move it all in here without getting weird and doing something funny or putting dents where we needed to. A mount that looks like this, that just has the flange down ½ an inch, is going to work just fine for our application here. So we are going to design a new passenger side mount to go for this swap specifically. On the rear, you just saw earlier when we were comparing the V6 subframe with the TSX subframe, where that rear mount mounts, it's shifted over on the 4-cylinder car. So We made a special bracket that comes off the back of the V6 block that kind of dog legs over to where our mount is so that we can use the stock TSX subframe, doesn't change our track, and that mount should hold the engine no problem. We made it nice and beefy, 1/4-inch plate where it bolts up to the motor, nice reinforced pieces that come off that. So I think this is going to work just perfectly for our purposes, which is racing, but it also, of course, work for street applications. All right, for cooling, originally we were going to try and use the V6 radiator, but the mounts are just all different. I was hoping to use that because in that way I could use the V6 hoses, but didn't work out. So we have the TSX radiator in here, and if you notice, it's going to be a little tight for the condenser fan, but this, again, race car. If I was going to run AC, I would just put a flat pancake fan on that side and deal with it, but again, race car. So we have the stock radiator fan, the stock reservoir, and the stock upper hose. The bottom hose is this Gates hose, part number 22997. I think it comes off a Hyundai or something, I don't know, one of those not Honda cars. That is our lower hose, and it worked really well, although on the bottom of the TSX radiator, there's like a quick disconnect, and it is keyed. We had to knock the key off. We had to grind that off, and that way we could clock the quick disconnect in the direction we wanted to, and then we were able to use the stock lower quick disconnect on our TSX radiator, and it worked fine. I would imagine if you had a racing radiator, it would be lacking that, and you would just be able to connect this hose directly to the lower radiator outlet. For the heater hoses, we just used bulk hose for that. We wound up having to use a 3/4-inch hose for the upper radiator hose, and the bottom one was a 5/8-inch hose, but we just used bulk hose, connected that up. It should do absolutely fine. It's just not the formed ones that you would normally find with Honda. As far as the radiator's capacity goes, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fine for cooling this car. It's a full-size radiator. I don't think the J series is going to require a whole lot more radiator, and if it did, we'd just go buy a TSX racing radiator. They're pretty cheap right now. You get them for a couple $100, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. More on that when we actually race the car. Strange, the shifter box for both the TL, the Accord V6, the Accord 4-cylinder, and the TSX, first generation TSX, the shape is identical on all those. The only difference is on the TL, when the handle comes out, it kind of makes a jog over towards the driver, probably because of the way the interior of the TL is spaced out. It's kind of a wider car. We were able to just take the TSX box, take the Accord J series cables from a 2003-2007 Accord with the V6 manual. We were able to just bolt those, use those cables as is in there. They work absolutely fine. It shifts perfectly. And of course, they're absolutely routed like stock. Now, that's not the only connection here. We also have the clutch slave cylinder, and basically we took the clutch slave cylinder that comes with the manual transmissions and the hard line, and we're able to use that. That gets a hard line connection back to the backside of the transmission. We were then able to use the TSX's rubber line that goes from the clutch master cylinder. There's a line, then a soft line, and you just connect it up again like stock. Intermediate shafts. Automatic or manual intermediate shafts, they all bolt on to this transmission and block. Now you are going to be using the intermediate shaft from any of the engines that have the single outlet on each head. You can't use the ones that have the 3 outlets, the individual header exits. It has to be from the newer engine. But automatic or manual, they all fit. There is a difference though. Odyssey, the trucks all use a much bigger shaft, and we didn't have joints for that. So what we wound up using was an Accord manual intermediate shaft. We could use an Accord automatic one too. We used that, and we made axles for this particular swap. The stock axles aren't going to work because on a J series, those cars are wider. they're wider by an inch. So that's a ½ inch on each axle wider. So we had to make axles for that. So once the mount kit's available, axles will also be available. Just understand that you're going to be probably buying a intermediate shaft from an Accord or from an automatic car in order to get the drive shafts to fit properly. All right, that brings us to power steering. This formed hose is the one that comes on the TL and the Accord. The power steering is basically came with the engine. We did have to make a new hose though. This hose is actually a combination of the J series V6 hose on top, and on the bottom it's a TSX hose. So we had VTEC go ahead and weld on some threaded fittings on each of the two pieces of hose, and then make us a high pressure hose that goes in between. This hose holds about 3,000 psi. It'll be plenty for our car. The belt though is a little bit different because we don't have AC, so the belt is shorter. So we went and bought this particular belt. It is a 6K703. That means it is approximately 70 inches long, and it's actually, I think, about 72 5/8 or 7/8. That's how long this belt is, and that is a little bit on the long side, but hopefully it doesn't stretch and it works just fine. Again, more on that later. There are shorter ones available, just there weren't any in stock here in Phoenix, so this is the one we got. O2 sensors. O2 sensors aren't always available because a lot of times salvage yards will just basically unbolt the cats and cut the wires. It helps to have friends that are doing this kind of stuff, so we were actually able to call a salvage yard and have them pull off the O2 sensors, both the tops and the bottom ones. Because we're using a swap ECU and this is a race car, we're not using the secondary O2 sensors on this. But if I needed to, I was able to buy those from them as well. Our downpipes are originally from RV6. I don't believe they make them anymore. Companies are now making stuff that have the catalytic converters because they don't want people circumventing the catalytic converter laws, particularly since people were using them on street cars. Again, this is not a street car. This is actually going to be a race car. It will not be licensed for street use at all. If I do decide fully caged, stripped down, that's the eventual plan for the car with this engine. So if I decide to make a J-Series swap car with a J-Series engine, a TSX with a J-Series engine, I will put cats on it. Just so you guys know, I'm all about following the law. So I do not want to bring bad attention to people. This has a swap ECU. This is a swap engine. This is not a street legal car. Okay, Brian's been hard at work wiring this thing. Remember, we're starting off with a TSX, and we're going to try and wire it to match that of a 2008 TL, and it was quite a bit different, wasn't it?
Yes, but no. We had plugs we needed, so that was good. Most of the wires we needed in kind of the right spots. We got some schematics off the internet for the TL, and I sat down with Mr. TSX
Manual.
Helms book, which you cannot deny Honda information, and just had to play around and find the wires we needed, and it really was like, you have to know what you're looking at, but yeah, making the...
Plug and play.
Yeah, after I got done, it was plug and play. I just had to sit down for about a week and a half and sit here and scratch our heads and go back to the drawing board a few times, but I think we're ready to fire it.
Okay, it was only actually 2 days. But anyway, let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to let him have the honors this time because he did all the wiring. Oh, we forgot to put our A-pipe on it. If it fires up, it may be a little loud.
I'm not responsible for exhaust. I was
Okay.
just doing the wiring.
All right, that's true. Then that's my fault for not telling you to do the exhaust. All right.
We'll blame Scott.
The guy, Scott. All right, here we go. Yes! How old would you say that gas is?
I'm going with 6, pushing 7.
Oh my God. There's the gas in the gas tank, 6 or 7 years old, and yet it's still fired up. That's crazy. Well, that's cool though. All right, well, I think test drive is in order. Not today though. We don't have any front brakes. We need to probably bleed the clutch master because we had no clutch pedal in it. So anyway, we're gonna try to get this to a point where we can actually take it for test drive and take it for a quick spin and see how it does. And we might need to quiet down a little bit too.
What?
Hey guys, that's a wrap. We're gonna prep this car so we can actually take it out on the street. That's gonna take another day or two of work. Anyway, please think about liking and subscribing. The VTEC TSX lives, and there will be wiring information available to you in the show notes, at least a link to where you can get a copy of what we did. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on another episode of VTEC Academy, and we'll catch you next time.